Our next one is from Morphologist. The best features of Alpha 317. I wonder if we agree on what the best features are. We'll have to see. Is it clouds, Morph? Is it clouds?
The first quarter Star Citizen patch of 2022 is finally upon us, bringing with it a few changes and features that just may convince you not to skip this next installment. Hey guys, I'm Morphologist, and welcome back. With CIG's announcement of their shift to focusing on the single-player campaign Squadron 42 this year, the outlook for Star Citizen in 2022 hasn't been that great for the persistent universe, and 317 doesn't deviate much from what we expected, being a reasonable step forward in the form of a small patch with some big changes and just a few new features, some of which are not actually listed on the roadmap. And trust me when I say that those are the juicy ones. So in this video, I'll take you through the visual updates, gameplay changes, and then finally the exciting new features in 317 in this latest installment of the best features. So sit back, relax, and if you enjoy this video and you think I deserve it, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button to show your support. In 317, Star Citizen takes the moodiness of Hurston
First thing, clouds.
up a notch by adding clouds to the entirety of the planet, bringing us yet another step closer to that Blade Runner experience in Lorville. As per the lore, the clouds are kinda dirty, and that's because Hurston is a very polluted planet that the Hurston Dynamics company has been using for weapons testing, so don't breathe too deeply when you visit. Under the hood for clouds, they also fixed a bug with scattering queries, which was previously worked around. That scattering, by the way, is what gives clouds their visual density, and so this should make it run hopefully a little bit better as the code's a bit more clean. Now while clouds certainly aren't gameplay, they are something that adds to the immersion factor of the game, and it certainly does make an impact on prospective players and existing players when they want to visit a location like this. And
that's true, and in general, maybe that scattering thing is, you know how they kind of look like the clouds looked a lot very pixelated when they first came in? They look a lot like puffier and cloudy on Hurston. I don't think I've been to Microtech since 317, but yeah, it looks pretty good.
so for that, it's a pretty good feature, and it's definitely worth checking out when you hop in 317. But clouds aren't the only improvement to Hurston this time around. We're also getting Maria Pier of Heart, a new hospital location in the city of Lorville, which is great news for those of you looking to live in a dystopian society ruled by a possibly evil corporation. In my view, the teams responsible for this location, including the lore team, have done a phenomenal job of making this place feel incredibly atmospheric. It's well worth visiting, especially for the hilarious announcements that you'll hear from time to time while you're visiting. Just listen to this little gem.
Sure, we all want to be able to work longer hours, but overdosing on stimulants is not the answer. From a higher chance of accidents and mistakes to a decrease in performance and quality of work, Hurston Dynamics reminds employees that too many stints slows you down.
Or how about this one, which hilariously played right after the last one?
Feeling ready to get back to work? Ask your doctor or pharmacist how to taper your medication dosage to help you return to the job in record time.
Screenshot junkies rejoice because clouds aren't the only addition to 317 for the visual side. We also are getting our first iteration of rivers on Microtech. It's only one river for now, but you can find it by heading 205 from New Babbage at a distance of about 430 kilometers. It's going to be in the first patch Agrinia spot on your way in this direction, so if you go past that, you've already passed the river. The river is currently only around 10 kilometers long, so it's not even that big. Instead, CIG are using this new river to test its performance, its visuals, and to get feedback from us about how we feel about the experience. That way they can implement those changes before it's propagated across the planet and causes.
Bro, you know how I feel about the experience? It's a fucking river, dude. Like...
problems. We can probably expect to see rivers all across Microtech, on Hurston, and perhaps on a few moons in the Stanton system, and certainly we can expect to see them in the Pyro system, in the form of not just water, but lava eventually as well. But like all planet tech that they've introduced in the past, the first iteration isn't always perfect. It's definitely got some flaws and doesn't look realistic in some areas. This, I'm sure, is going to be addressed through more iterations going into future patches, and even before the release to the live environment later this month. Like Clouds though, there isn't a whole lot of integral gameplay experiences associated with this location just yet. There are no missions here, and there's certainly nothing to do related to the river, though it makes a nice backdrop to do hand mining or to find minables on the ground, which you can locate. In my travels, I found a Quantanium rock. One way you might use to travel this area is via a hovercraft like the Dragonfly or the new one from Consolidated Outlands. As in 317, you can also float
completely missed the apex there. Completely missed the apex. Just
above
saying.
water in hover vehicles, which wasn't a thing before. I guess hoverboards can work on water. If you got that reference, you're my people. I actually found it makes for a really exciting racetrack, so maybe we'll do that in a future stream. Check me out on Twitch, by the way. In CIG's ongoing efforts to improve the visuals of the game, they've improved the faces all around. Now they're higher textured and look much more realistic, including the eyeballs, which now have a bit of a moisture effect to them to give them an even more realistic feel. Unfortunately, hair still remains to be the old version, which really stands out like a sore thumb now against the much higher quality facial textures. CIG, can we please get some more hairstyles of higher quality? Please? Oh, and they also removed some eye colors and hair colors, unfortunately. I don't like that change. I think they should have kept the weird ones like red and purple. Some smaller changes include ASOP terminals making a switch over to building blocks, which means that you can see what other people are doing and can even mess with them. This guy literally had no idea what was going on. Luckily, it doesn't have any consequence because I can't actually pull their vehicles out. It just cancels what they're doing. Emotes also had a little bit of an update, so we now have some more dancing animations and some other emotes, so you can check those out. Clinics have also seen a bit of a visual upgrade, but more practically speaking, they now have more beds, which means that for events in the future, you'll have a place to spawn reliably. Unfortunately, in the last event for Xeno Threat, there were a lot of people who were getting stuck because there weren't enough beds at the Mike L1 Lagrange point. Of course, though, how could I not talk about the highlight feature of 317, the coffee shop?
I still have not seen the coffee vendor or the river in 317, like, at all.
Vendor, kidding, of course, which does seem to work pretty well. This was an onboarding task by a new member of CIG, and so it wasn't really meant to be a big highlight feature. It was just something kind of cool that they added, and unfortunately, it's only in Area 18, so if you want to experience this, you'll have to head on over there until they add more, hopefully in future patches. But now let's move on to some of the more significant changes, such as the reduction to vehicle detection range, which should give ground vehicles just a little bit more protection against hovering ships. And netcoding has also been improved for...
Okay, like, he just glanced over that. Like, he spent, like, 30 minutes on a fucking river and glanced over something that, you know, I could have spent 30 minutes on here, which is that specific thing. The vehicles having a reduction in signature so you can't see them from far away. They're gonna do Jump Town again. That's gonna change things significantly. Like, it really makes it so it is viable to bring a bunch of tanks and vehicles and everything down to that area, and that's how you would hold it down, because it would be a lot more difficult. I also believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, chat, when you lock onto a ground vehicle, you do not get a diamond to aim at, so it makes it a lot more difficult to shoot them from the sky, at least when moving around, which is, you know, pretty good. So it gives them some viability in the game. You know, people spent money on these things. More importantly, CIG spent a lot of development time on vehicles. They have viability in the game now for the first time ever, almost. Like they did in Jump Town, but not as much as they could. Now that's really interesting.
For player versus player interactions, which has made the NPC interaction experience a little bit more janky. That's because the locations of NPCs and players are being updated a lot more frequently, and sometimes the server can be a little bit strange. But it hasn't been too bad in my experience. It's still completely playable if you're going up against NPCs. This should make a big difference in fighting massive player-to-player desync, which resulted in really aggravating PvP experiences where you think you're hitting somebody and you're in the right position, when in fact they may be behind you and you just don't see them. They've also brought cluster missiles back, which now should work pretty well. Starmarine has also gotten some love. It now works a lot better and you're able to actually get in matches and have them continue on to another round after they're completed. And the scoreboard is also now improved via, I think, the building block system. And one of the better improvements here is to grenades, which now will no longer suck back to your hands and blow you up after you've thrown them, which was a big problem before.
That
To be honest,
happened to
though,
me
I'm
in
still highly
317. I don't
traumatized and
think
don't
it's
entirely
fixed.
trust them. Medical gameplay has thankfully also gotten some love, as it wasn't entirely that great for the first 2 patches. Players should now reliably go into a down state once they've been killed, allowing you to be rescued by a friend, whereas before you just go straight to a hospital, or to prison if you're a criminal. Injuries should also now more reliably happen, although I've not personally experienced that just yet. Unfortunately, the medical beacons still after 6 months don't work. Hopefully they get that sorted in this PTU cycle, because it's going to be hard to motivate people to save others when there's no reward. 317 also introduces physicalized components for both weapons
Yes.
and regular ship
Huge
components,
deal.
which means that you can now transport them from station to station, but more importantly, when a ship explodes, there's a chance that you can nab one of those components off the wreck. This, I think, is going to tie into salvage later down the line.
Does that, when he says there's a chance, does he mean, this is something I'm not familiar with. If you destroy a ship that's let's say it's a Gladius, it has 3 Panthers on it, will one of those drop? Possibly? Is that what he's trying to say? Or only items that are in the inventory would drop? I think that's more likely what it is. But, yeah. Right? Like, I don't know. I'm kind of going to wait on chat on this one. Because weapons never dropped. It's only inventory, right? I haven't seen component drops from equipped weapons in 317. Yeah, I didn't think so. All right. That was a little misleading there.
But now I want to introduce you guys to some of the more significant features in 317. First, and my most favorite of them, are the changes to the inventory and the loot pool systems. In the past, I complained that things have little value, as there's no such thing as rarity, and you can pretty much buy everything in the game right away. CIG have begun to address this by removing some of the armor that we used to have in shops, leaving them now in the loot pool only or to be looted off of NPCs.
Yes,
On the
very
weapon
good
side,
change.
you can now only get pistols, SMGs, shotguns, and some assault rifles, leaving light machine guns, some assault rifles, rocket launchers, grenade launchers, and railguns all in the loot pool. The idea being that bringing more powerful weapons to a fight is gonna have a little bit more risk. These changes, I think, are mostly positive. However, there are some downsides. For one, it's now harder to run events because it's going to be more difficult to get a hold of some types of weapons. But for me, I think it's most concerning that now we have no access to rocket launchers, making ground forces even weaker against air targets. At least before we could threaten them with man-pads. Now we've got nothing unless we find something in a loot box. I really hope they address this in some way through the reputation system, or
I
bring
think
it
they
back
will.
to be able to be purchased in maybe a unique or hidden location. The loot boxes that you can find around the world also now have a relationship to what's in them. White boxes, for example, will often contain things like food, resources.
Okay. Sure. Loot boxes have things that have that make sense, right? That's what Morph said. And that's Morph's just basically reading off patch notes in this case, right? Look at this loot container. Why are there Hadanite rocks in a loot container? At a security post. Like, is this even a mining facility? Also, why are Hadanite rocks in a food container? What? Here's my favorite thing. It's been very difficult to mine with the ROC, and hand mining is kind of not really that viable. Why are we throwing these in the containers and not fixing those problems? I don't know.
And minables such as Hadanite, which is extremely valuable and definitely worth picking up. I made over 100k in just Had Night from the run that you
100K
saw.
in just Had
I'm
Night.
talking a single run, making this potentially one of the most profitable things that you can do in 317.
That's ridiculous.
For armor, weapons, and ammo, look to the red boxes, or potentially the green army boxes, which are also about the same length. Perhaps even better though, every single sub-item up until last year is now also lootable in boxes. So things like this golden multi-tool are things that you can find. And after you've filled up your ship and your backpack with gear, you can go sell it with the new Sell tab that you can now find in virtually every single shop around the verse. However, there are some limitations. Certain shops will only buy certain things. So for example, an armor shop will only buy armor. However, there are some shops that buy and sell multiple different types of items, and so those may be a better bet for you to check out.
I still haven't been able to buy the box.
However, as great as it is to have a very important part of an MMO finally functional in Star Citizen, the actual act of looting people, like NPCs and players, is an extremely frustrating and time-consuming process, some of it down to just the game's design at present. For example, there's no container or backpack I can fit armor into, so I have to move these bodies one by one into my ship in order to drag them into my ship's inventory. But
Is that true? So is the 1/8 box that you could buy, you could put armor and stuff in that, right? So Morph may not know about that because it worked for a little bit in the PTU and then I couldn't buy it anymore, but apparently you can only buy it at Grimhex. So there's some things that maybe I need to jump in game and figure it out, because I have not gone to Grimhex to try it. Apparently it's at Grimhex, Pete, so I don't know about that. You couldn't even fit weapons in that new container. Okay. So I've heard some like differing reports about that container, so maybe I'll have to do my own research
that process
on it.
is even further marred by missing basic inventory features like stacking, marquee selection, move all.
Yeah, you can jank it by blowing up an Aurora. You get a 1 SCU size box, and then, yeah. But I think that's like a weird one where, does everybody see the same inventory in it? I don't know.
And quick move options. That leaves you needing to move items one by one in a very unintuitive way, where some items can't be removed until others are first. For example, you can't remove this guy's chest piece before you first remove the ammo and weapons attached to it, with no indication for that being the reason why you can't remove the chest piece. CIG did try to make looting a little bit easier on us by allowing us to purchase containers that we can store stuff in, but unfortunately, these containers don't store anything more than pistols and helmets. They can't fit in stuff like armor or weapons, and so at least
okay, so I had very bad info then, because I was never able to test it because I wasn't able to buy it. People told me you could put like big things in here.
it's somewhat useless.
not.
You might as well just bring more backpacks. Hopefully we get some bigger boxes to buy. But it gets just a little bit worse after
Thank
that.
you, Commander
I'm not
Ulu.
sure if
I
this is a
appreciate it, buddy.
feature or a bug, but I couldn't actually sell from my ship's inventory. And so for me to be able to sell all the armor I just spent
It's a
20
feature.
minutes looting, I have to transfer it now one by one into the local inventory of this station in order to sell it. Honestly then, that makes looting armor off of people just a waste of time.
I mean, I hate to say this because it's like just the most annoying thing to hear, but this is part of like Star Citizen actually being an alpha, and this kind of thing doesn't bother me as much. They went, here's what they did. They told us the steps they were going to take for inventory. It was going to be this, bag of holding that we had forever. Then now we have these like little individual bags of holding, and then everything is going to be physicalized. We're still in the individual bag of holding situation, and it is a bit weird, and I can't imagine that they wouldn't want us to be able to sell from our ship's inventory. That's kind of crazy, but I'm kind of okay with things not working perfectly, because in the end, this is just the middle state. This is just the workaround for things to be a bit more fun, even though they might be more tedious than we would want them to be, because eventually everything's supposed to just be physicalized anyway. So, yeah. That's like the one part where I'm like, okay, yes, it's annoying, but because they've been actively working towards the end goal of inventory, it doesn't bother me as much that it's really annoying.
Better off looting the little accessories and rocks that you can get out of the white boxes versus trying to grab bodies, because you're going to absolutely kill your money-making efficiency by trying to do so. But I digress. Let's move on to other features. Yet another
I mean, Morph also forgets that you could just fly those bodies into the local inventory area and then transfer them only once, right? Instead of twice.
Facet has been added to the mining gameplay in the form of mining gadgets. Like the modules added earlier last year, they modify the properties of the rock to allow you to more easily mine them, in cases where rocks may be too unstable or have really high resistance. They are very expensive though, so luckily they are reusable if you retrieve them after you've mined the rock, so don't forget to do so. Unfortunately, these devices don't seem to work right now in BTU, so I can't show you guys any footage of it actually working. So instead, here's some low quality upscaled 1080p footage I got from Star Citizen's official post. This is how it's supposed to work, and eventually will once it goes live. Unfortunately though, these don't seem to work with small rocks like with the ROC mines.
I mean, you wouldn't need them.
317 is also introducing a much anticipated ship, the first in a long series of haulers, the Hull A from MISC, distinguished by its unique transforming hull that can deploy outboard cargo mag pads, which allows it to carry a great deal more cargo than its competitors that have to transport cargo internally. This also has the benefit of being able to be loaded faster with the fully realized cargo refactor coming later in Star Citizen's development. The downside, of course, is that you're exposing your cargo and it can therefore be more easily damaged, destroyed, or even stolen. So be careful out there, haulers. The Hull A will get a fully dedicated Architect Reviews later, so make sure you're subscribed for that.
Let's go. Architect Reviews, the Hull A. Very exciting.
It's a ship that sets a new standard for ship designs in Star Citizen, so be sure not to miss it. And on the subject of ships, some that were only previously available on the website for purchase are now available in-game for in-game money. A list should be up on the screen, although it does seem that we're still missing the Ares and Ion, strangely, from Crusader.
They did make a post saying that those will get added into the game, but at a later date, not in 317. So maybe 317.1 or whatever.
And finally, after a long time waiting for this feature to come online, we're getting Quanta in 317, which is a big deal for Star Citizen's universe. If you don't know what this is, it's basically a background universe simulator that's simulating hundreds of thousands of NPCs to dynamically adjust events and prices for commodities. Initially, for its first release, it will only affect the price of repair, quantum fuel, and hydrogen fuel. Although I suspect it may also be affecting some other things like the service beacons, which seem to be a lot more frequent in 317. If you guys want to learn more about this, it's fascinating. You should check out any of Tony Z's talks over on Star Citizen's main channel, or you can check out my summary of CitizenCon from last year. Congratulations, Tony Z and team. I hope that this works out and that you guys can implement more of this going into the next patch.
I mean, it's working so well. Fuel is free. Hydrogen fuel is literally free. That's how good it is. So I don't know what is going on, but pretty much fuel is free because...
And it kind of makes sense that it affects fuel because of the next feature they added in 317. 317 also gives the ugliest ship in Star Citizen, the Starfarer, a real purpose, with the first new profession in years, refueling. The Starfarer's individually detachable tanks can now carry either hydrogen fuel or quantum fuel depending on the preference of the tanker. However, the Starfarer's refinery is still not operational, so unfortunately it won't be able to create its own fuel just yet. To accommodate this new profession, the refueling, repair, and rearm screen for the Mobiglass has gotten a bit of a rework, allowing you now to individually fill tanks on your ship and to be able to select how much fuel you actually buy. As with the new Quanta update, sometimes fuel can be pretty expensive, especially during events. The refueling process is actually a lot more developed and interesting than I had originally anticipated.
Me too.
What you do is you pull up to the back of a Starfarer and request docking permission. If they allow you to dock, you dock with the refueling arm and you can begin the refueling process. The owner of the refueler can then dictate the price of the quantum or hydrogen fuel that the individual docking wants to purchase. The operator will be responsible for deploying the boom, opening the nozzle.
Should have been 420.69. Silly.
And selecting which tank it should flow from. The operator can also regulate the flow rate, allowing you to fill a ship faster. However, if you fill it too fast, bad things happen. Spilling highly flammable quantum fuel next to exhaust ports isn't exactly the wisest thing you can do. So while 3.17 isn't the biggest patch ever to be released for Star Citizen, it still contains some good stuff in there that I think is definitely worth checking the game out for again. And I also think that it's possible that some of these features will play a role in upcoming events they have yet to announce. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. I've been Morphologist. See you out there in the verse.
What have the developers told you? What do you know about upcoming events? Tell me. I just think, for me, I just see a role for refueling when we go out and go mining. I've said this. I think I said this in Discord the other day. Or I think it was yesterday, actually. I've been playing 3.16 more than I've been playing 3.17, and I've really enjoyed just playing with other players. I feel like we have progress that we're trying to make, and it's been really nice. And I could see the changes coming into 3.17, making the experiences that we've had even more fun. So yeah, I think we're moving very, very slowly in the right direction. 3.17 feels that way. We'll see how 3.17 goes when it goes to live. I hope we get some nice performance updates that people are getting in there. But in general, I'm really got my eye on 3.18 and the cargo refactor. This is just the patch that we have to get through to get to there. So we'll see what happens. But yep, as always, thank you, Morphologist. I appreciate it. And yeah,